You have no right to request that we postpone our plans. We've had these Elton John tickets for months. My mother's voice rang out, sharp and unforgiving, echoing from my phone speaker in the hospital room. I clutched my phone in disbelief, my hands trembling. It was Christmas Eve. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly in the Las Vegas Medical Center as I sat there alone. Ethan and Emily, my 2-year-old twins, were playing quietly in the corner with soft blocks, their small voices a muffled comfort in the sterile room. Valerie, the nurse, gently checked my vitals. The pain in my stomach throbbed like a knife twisting deep inside me. The expression on my mother's face during the video call was blank, disinterested. I stared at the screen and whispered, "My name is Natasha Wilson." But at that moment, it felt like my name didn't matter. I was 33 years old and had always been the afterthought in my family. My younger sister, Jessica, the golden child, could do no wrong. And I could never do anything right in my parents' eyes. I had asked for their help just this once. I needed someone to stay with the twins while I underwent emergency surgery for internal bleeding, a complication related to the stress and trauma of losing my husband 6 months earlier. But all they cared about was missing a concert and celebrating Christmas Eve on their terms. When I finally reached out to Jessica, after exhausting every other option, my father's response hit harder than any scalpel could. "You're becoming a burden, Natasha. We deserve to enjoy our retirement without your constant problems." I had supported them financially for 3 years, ever since they took early retirement. Without fail, I sent them $2,500 each month to cover their mortgage and expenses, even after James died. I believed in family, in duty, in love. I thought we were supposed to help each other. How naive I was. Tears slid quietly down my cheeks. Valerie noticed and gently placed a warm hospital blanket over my shoulders. "Olivia," Valerie said softly, "is a friend of mine who works with children in trauma. Would you like me to call her?" Her kindness was such a contrast to what I was feeling from my own family. The twins were too young to understand what was happening, but they had already lost their father in a car accident, and now they might lose me too. The thought was unbearable. I was terrified, but more than that, I was afraid of leaving them in the care of people who didn't truly love them. As pain radiated through my body and disappointment broke my heart, I made my decision. "Yes," I said to Valerie, "please call her." That was the moment I began to sever ties with the people who had raised me but never truly supported me. The people who couldn't be bothered to show up, not even when their daughter was lying in a hospital bed. As Valerie left the room, I stared up at the ceiling, the weight of memories pressing down. I'd spent a lifetime being overlooked. Jessica had always been the center of attention. When I graduated college with honors, they barely noticed because Jessica had just appeared in a regional ad that same weekend. When James and I got married, they complained the venue was too far from home. When the twins were born, they visited once, and then only to comment that the babies were too kid-needy. James had been my anchor. He saw the pain I hid behind my smile. He understood the disappointment I carried. He came from a broken family too, and often said, "We'll build our own, one that knows what love really is." And we did. We filled our little home with laughter, with safety, with belonging, until 6 months ago when a drunk driver took him away, leaving me alone to raise our kids and grieve. Still, I kept going. I continued sending money to my parents, even as I struggled with bills and depression. I thought I was doing the right thing, being the bigger person. Now, with the surgery looming, I realized how wrong I'd been. Valerie returned and told me Olivia would arrive within the hour. "She's wonderful with children," she said. "Used to work in pediatric trauma before becoming a private nanny." I felt a flicker of hope, quickly overshadowed by worry. "How much will it cost?" I asked, my voice cracking. James's insurance had expired. My medical bills were already stacking up. Valerie gave me a gentle smile. "Don't think about that right now. Let's just get you ready for surgery." Still, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That $2,500 I was supposed to send my parents next week, It could go toward childcare instead. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something inside me stir, a flame of self-preservation I thought had long gone out. When Olivia arrived, she was everything Valerie promised, warm, capable, instantly connecting with Ethan and Emily. I felt a small but genuine relief. As the nurses prepared me for surgery, I looked at Valerie and said, "Can you hand me my phone?" I typed 2 messages. The first was to my bank, cancelling all automatic transfers to my parents' account. The second was to my parents. I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve better than being your afterthoughts. Please don't contact me again. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I felt something unexpected ripple through the fear and pain. Freedom. The surgery was successful, but I was weaker than anticipated. I spent 5 days in the hospital, drifting in and out of awareness. Olivia stayed with the twins in my room during the day and brought them home to sleep at night. On one of my clearer days, I saw my phone light up. 27 missed calls, dozens of texts, all from Jessica and my parents. The messages followed a pattern: confusion, then anger, then begging. Not once did they ask how the surgery went or if the twins were okay. The last message from my father stood out. "You can't just cut us off. We have a trip planned next month. The tickets are non-refundable." Jessica's texts were different from the rest. She sounded confused, almost concerned. "Mom and Dad said you were just overreacting. They told me you only needed a checkup." She followed up with, "Why are they so frantic about money all of a sudden?" That question lingered. It was clear now. They had downplayed everything to Jessica, lied even. I decided she deserved to know the truth. Still groggy from medication, I sent her the full story. Her reply came quickly. "Oh my God, I had no idea. I thought you were exaggerating. I'm so sorry. If I had known, I would have helped. I would have come." Jessica wasn't malicious. She had just grown up in the same house I had, with parents who taught her that her needs always came first. But maybe this revelation would help her see them for who they really were. By the time I was discharged, I had made several decisions. I hired Olivia part-time to help with the twins while I recovered. I contacted an attorney to update my will, naming a trusted friend as guardian, should anything happen to me. And I blocked my parents' numbers, allowing only Jessica to reach me while I figured out where we stood. Financially, ending the $2,500 monthly support was huge. As a freelance graphic designer, that money had made up nearly 1/3 of my income. But without that burden, I could now afford proper childcare, and maybe even begin rebuilding the emergency fund I'd drained after James passed away. That night, lying in my own bed while the twins slept across the hall, I was overwhelmed by a strange cocktail of emotions. Guilt, deeply ingrained, whispered that I'd done something wrong. Fear clung to me, unsure how I'd managed 2 toddlers while still healing, but beneath all that was something new, a flicker of self-respect. Jessica texted me late that night. "I just had a huge fight with Mom and Dad. I'm staying at a hotel. Can we talk tomorrow?" Maybe I wasn't as alone as I'd thought. 2 weeks post-surgery, I was slowly regaining strength. The incision still throbbed if I moved too fast, but I was managing. Olivia came by each morning to help with the twins. My design clients had been more understanding than I expected, and remote work allowed me to stay close to Ethan and Emily. Jessica visited twice that week. She brought healthy lunches and spent time with the kids. At first, our conversations were cautious, polite but guarded. Then, one afternoon, she said something that stuck with me. "They always made it seem like you were the one pulling away from the family," she admitted, watching the twins play with blocks. "I never realised they were pushing you out." I didn't say much then, but for the first time, I started to see my sister as someone who might understand. A few days later, I heard a knock at the door. I peeked through the peephole. My parents. My mother clutched her designer handbag like a lifeline. My father stood stiffly, arms crossed, wearing his usual look of annoyed patience. I cracked the door, not enough to let them in. "What do you want?" "Natasha, sweetheart," my mother said with a sugary tone that immediately put me on edge. "You haven't been answering our calls. We were worried." "We're fine," I replied, voice flat. "You could have asked before." My father pushed gently at the door. "We need to talk about the financial situation. The bank called us about the mortgage. We had to use our cruise savings to cover it." Not a word about my recovery. Not a single question about the twins. Just their money. "I told you I was cutting off support," I said, keeping the door firm against his push. "And I meant it." My mother's voice trembled. "We've adjusted our lifestyle around your help, Natasha. Your father and I made sacrifices based on your promise to provide." I stared at them in disbelief. "I've been moving money out of guilt for years. You couldn't even watch your grandchildren during my emergency surgery." My father's face flushed. "That's unfair. We had plans that were important." "More important than my life?" I snapped. "Do you even know what the doctors said? I might not have survived. Did you ever care?" Silence. Then my mother whispered, "We made one mistake." "Are you really going to punish us like this?" "This isn't punishment," I replied. "It's clarity. I've begged for your support my entire life. But you chose Elton John tickets over helping your daughter through life-saving surgery." My father's tone shifted, trying for warmth. "I'm a parent too. I understand now." "You don't," I said quietly. "Because if you did, you'd never have treated me the way you did." Emily wandered into the hallway, clutching her stuffed giraffe. My mother's face lit up. "There's my sweet girl. Come give Grandma a hug." But Emily hesitated, unsure. She glanced at me, and I knelt beside her. "They're strangers, honey," I said gently. "We don't hug strangers." Their smiles faltered. "We're family," my father said. "You're strangers to them. You chose to be." I closed the door slowly but firmly. The next day they returned, with Aunt Patty, my mother's sister. The family peacemaker, she pleaded through the door, soft-spoken and sincere. "Natasha, honey, they're struggling. Can you just help them get organised again?" I stayed silent. "They made those early retirement choices because they thought you'd help. They gave up work, trusted you." I finally answered. "I never promised lifelong support. I helped because I wanted to. That doesn't mean I owe them everything." That afternoon, my father sent a group email to the extended family, painting me as ungrateful. He left out the part about refusing to help during my surgery, about ignoring their grandchildren, about calling me a burden. The backlash was immediate. Uncle Robert, Aunt Diana, they chimed in with disbelief. "Didn't you just buy a boat last year?" one cousin asked. "And isn't that a diamond bracelet you wore at Thanksgiving?" My inbox lit up with private messages. Most of them wanted the full story. Aunt Patty even called me directly. "I didn't know you had surgery," she said, voice heavy with guilt. "They told me it was a routine checkup, that you were being dramatic." Meanwhile, Jessica was firmly in my corner. She helped me write a short, honest reply to the family. I had emergency surgery. My parents declined to help because they had concert tickets. I'm now recovering while caring for my children. Please understand, I'm focusing on my health and my kids. What happened next surprised me. Cousin Michael's wife dropped off homemade meals. A distant cousin offered free part-time babysitting. Jessica started spending weekends with the twins. And Valerie from the hospital connected me to a support group for widowed parents. We met on Zoom so I could attend from home. And for the first time in a long while, I felt seen. Truly seen. While I found myself slowly healing, emotionally and physically, things on my parents' end were beginning to unravel. Jessica, who had now fully stepped into the role of ally, called me one afternoon with a nervous edge in her voice. "They got a foreclosure notice," she said quietly. "They have 60 days to pay, or they'll lose the house." I sat on the couch, Emily bouncing on my knee while Ethan napped in his room. "What about their retirement funds?" I asked. Jessica sighed. "Gone. They spent a huge chunk on the boat, then some on that golf trip with Dad's friends. It's like they really believed the money would always be there." She paused before adding, "Natasha, I'm not saying you should help them. I just thought you should know." That night, the texts from my parents changed in tone. Gone were the angry accusations. Now came desperation, pleading. My mother sent a long message admitting they had misjudged my decision, that they never expected me to actually follow through with cutting them off. They figured I'd get upset, then keep sending money after a week or two. It was heartbreaking, not the desperation, but the belief that my boundaries weren't real, that years of putting them first had trained them to expect me to always fold. But I wasn't folding anymore. In the midst of all of this, my own life had begun to reshape. The support group turned out to be more than just a place to vent. It became a source of real connection. One member, Diana, a real estate broker who'd lost her husband to cancer 2 years prior, took a special interest in helping me plan my next steps. "You don't have to stay stuck," she told me. "What about selling your apartment? It's tiny for 2 growing kids." She was right. With her help, I explored options I hadn't even considered before. I sold the apartment and used the equity to buy a modest home in a more affordable neighbourhood, one with a big backyard and great childcare programs. It was the first time in a long while that I felt like I was building something for us, not just surviving. Inspired by the memorial website I had built for James, I launched a small side business offering personalised digital memorials. Several members from the group became clients, and soon word of mouth brought in more work. For the first time since losing James, I felt like I had purpose again, beyond grief. Meanwhile, my parents' world continued to shrink. Jessica discovered they had taken out a second mortgage without telling anyone. It was used to finance the boat. They had gambled on my support continuing forever, and now they were losing everything. "They're not broke," Jessica told me during one of her now weekly visits. "They're just over-leveraged. If they sold the timeshare and the yacht, they'd be okay." But instead of making those sacrifices, they kept calling, leaving voicemails, sending increasingly emotional texts, guilt-laced pleas mixed with barely concealed bitterness. But the more they reached out, the more distance I felt. I was building something from the ashes of their betrayal, something rooted in real love and mutual care. Then, about a month after my surgery, they showed up again. This time, they didn't come empty-handed. They brought spreadsheets, debt spreadsheets. "We need 144,000 to avoid foreclosure," my father said, his tone still laced with that familiar authority. "You have to help." I didn't open the door all the way, but I let them sit at my dining table. "What about selling the boat?" I asked. Dad frowned. "We've tried. The market's terrible." "And the timeshare?" My mother chimed in. "That's our retirement escape. We can't lose everything." I nearly laughed at the absurdity. "You're asking for help, but refuse to let go of your luxuries." Dad straightened, offended. "We made sacrifices for you. The least you can do is help now." "What sacrifices?" I asked softly. "Please, be specific." There was a pause, long and uncomfortable. Just then, Ethan toddled into the room, holding his favourite toy car. Emily followed, babbling as she dragged her little giraffe by the leg. My parents' faces softened instantly. "Our sweet babies," my mum cooed. "They don't know you," I said gently but firmly. "They've seen you, twice since they were born?" "We were busy," Dad said defensively. "Too busy for your own daughter when she had emergency surgery. But not too busy to demand money." That, I thought, said everything. My mother's face crumpled. either from shame or another attempt at manipulation. I couldn't tell anymore. "We're going to lose everything," she whispered. "I already lost my husband," I replied, my voice steady. "The twins lost their dad. We survived. You will too." They didn't say another word. They left quietly. Jessica later confirmed they were forced to sell the house to avoid foreclosure. They moved into a small condo in a less desirable part of town. The boat? Sold at a loss. The timeshare? Given up. "They're still telling everyone it's your fault," Jessica said during one of her weekend visits, "that you promised to support them forever and then abandoned them." I shrugged. Let them talk. The truth is its own defense. Most of our extended family had already heard the real story by then and chosen sides. Many sided with me. Even my father's older sister, who had always taken his side, called to apologize for not reaching out sooner. She'd believed their version until she learned what happened during my surgery. Things were different now. Better. With Diana's help, I had moved into a modest 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood where the twins could run free in the backyard. My new mortgage was less than the rent I'd been paying. My design work was steady. The memorial website business had grown. And with Olivia still helping 3 days a week, I'd rearranged my life to actually enjoy time with Emily and Ethan. I had neighbours who brought casseroles, a support group that felt like family. Jessica, who had once felt like a rival for our parents' affection, was becoming a true sister. Even Valerie, the nurse who had first helped house me in the hospital, stopped by now and then to check in. I had lost a husband, cut ties with my parents, walked through fire, but I had never felt less alone. 6 months after my surgery, I received a letter in the mail. Not a bill, not a postcard, an actual letter, handwritten and sealed. The envelope had my mother's familiar looping script. My first instinct was to toss it, but curiosity won. Inside was something I hadn't expected. Vulnerability. "I've had time to think," she wrote. "Watching you build a life without us, without our help, forced me to face some truths. I was jealous of your strength, of your independence. I needed you to need me the way I needed my own mother, but you didn't, and instead of celebrating that, I resented you for it." She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just acknowledgement. That, in her own twisted way, she had failed me and knew it. She said they had restructured their finances. My father had taken a part-time job at a local hardware store. They'd sold most of their expensive things, downsized their life. For the first time, they were living simply, not lavishly. I showed the letter to Jessica, who raised an eyebrow but didn't dismiss it. "They've been talking about you a lot," she said. "Dad didn't want her to write you at first, but after his health scare last month, I think something's shifted." My stomach clenched. "Health scare?" Jessica nodded. "He's got high blood pressure, some chest pain, it's being treated, but it shook him. I think it made him realise how fragile everything is." I didn't respond right away. I needed space to process. Was this real or another manipulation? Had they really changed, or were they just adapting? That night, I pulled out old family photos. I hadn't looked at them in over a year. Behind the smiling faces, I started seeing patterns I hadn't recognised before. My parents had always been performers. They knew how to look like the perfect family. But underneath was always control, image, obligation. Still, people can change, can't they? A year after the surgery, I agreed to meet them, on neutral ground. A quiet cafe not far from my new home. When they walked in, I barely recognised them. My father looked smaller, somehow. More stooped. My mother's usual designer wardrobe had been replaced by something simple. Practical. Jessica came too, holding Emily's hand as the twins ran ahead to the play area just outside the window. We sat down at a table, awkward silence stretching between us. Then my dad did something I never thought I'd see. He cried. "I've been a lousy father," he said, voice breaking. "I don't expect you to forgive me." But I want you to know, I see it now. How selfish we were. My mother reached across the table, not quite touching me, but close. We've been going to family counselling, she said. Jessica insisted. We didn't want to go at first, but it's helped. It's helping. I didn't make promises that day. I didn't offer money or affection I wasn't ready to give. But I told them about the twins. I showed them photos. I spoke honestly. And for once, they listened. Really listened. And when we stood to leave, my dad whispered, maybe one day, maybe you'll let us know our grandkids. I paused before answering. That depends on what you do, not what you say. I explained that if they were truly committed to change, we could start slow, with brief, supervised visits. But I also made it clear, Emily and Ethan would only be around people who valued their mother, who respected her, period. As I left that meeting, I didn't feel that old weight on my chest. Not the crushing guilt, not the seething anger, just a strange, peaceful certainty. I knew my worth. I knew my limits. And I was no longer afraid to enforce them. In the months that followed, I kept my boundaries strong. My parents did begin to change, but cautiously, slowly. We had brief visits in the park with the kids. Sometimes Jessica came along, sometimes not. My parents brought snacks, asked questions, listened more than they spoke. They didn't ask for money again, and they never pressured me for more than I was ready to give. My new life continued to blossom. The memorial website business picked up even more. I was able to scale back my freelance design work and focus on projects that gave me purpose. I joined a co-op preschool with the twins, made new mum friends in the neighbourhood, and hosted playdates in our backyard. Valerie still stopped by sometimes, usually with coffee in hand and that nurse's instinct to check in even when she was off the clock. Olivia remained our trusted helper, and now friend. And Diana? She was no longer just a real estate broker. She had become a mentor, a sister in survival. But the most surprising transformation was with Jessica. She became the sister I never thought I'd have. She no longer looked to our parents for validation. She stood on her own. She helped me navigate things I used to face alone. School forms, meal planning, even the occasional evening when I needed a break and she took the twins for a sleepover. We had grown close in a way that only shared scars can allow. And, though I never imagined it, I finally had the family I'd always longed for. Not perfect, not traditional, but real. On the anniversary of James's death, I lit a candle beside his photo and whispered a promise. I kept going, and he would have been proud. At the heart of this story lies a powerful truth. Sometimes the family we're born into doesn't see us clearly until we find the courage to stand alone. Natasha's journey reminds us that love isn't about obligation. It's about mutual respect, care, and presence. She spent years giving to people who saw her generosity as a guarantee, not a gift. But when faced with her own vulnerability, she chose to protect her children and her peace, rather than continue pleasing those who never truly prioritized her. Her quiet bravery, enduring boundaries, even when it hurt, allowed healing to begin, not just for herself, but unexpectedly for her sister and even her parents. This story speaks to anyone who's ever felt like the background character in their own family's story. It's a reminder that we can rewrite that narrative, starting with one word: enough. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family duty and your own well-being? Or have you found unexpected strength in a time of loss? We'd love to hear your story in the comments. Share your thoughts below. Like this video if it moved you. And don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories like this one.